I can tell you the exact second everything shifted. Not when budgets tightened. Not when new leadership strutted in with buzzwords and neon ideas. Not even when the office coffee machine was replaced with something that tasted like liquid regret. No, it was when Jason, my boss's son, leaned back in his leather chair, crossed his arms like royalty and said, "Thanks for the work, sweetheart. We own your code." Now that sentence wasn't just incorrect. It was suicidal. But I didn't flinch. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I smiled. A calm, almost sympathetic smile. The kind you give someone who just confidently stepped into quicksand. You see, people like Jason grew up believing they were unstoppable. Born on third base and convinced they hit a triple. He was the kind of person who thought coding meant telling tech people to code faster. The type who believed leadership was volume, not competence. And I was invisible. I was the quiet one in the hoodie who avoided office parties, showed up early, fixed crises before alarms triggered, and could diagnose system failures faster than most people could unwrap a granola bar. 6 years I'd been there, longer than Jason had been out of his overpriced MBA program, long enough to know where every vulnerability lived and where every body was buried in the digital sense. He didn't fire me privately. Of course not. He fired me in the conference room with the blinds open so people could watch. He wanted an audience. His father, the CEO, wasn't there. He was flying back from New York on one of his quarterly investor tours. If he had been, things would have gone differently. But life has timing, and this timing was exquisite. Jason slid termination papers across the glossy table, smirking like he was delivering a punchline. "Corporate restructuring," he announced loudly to the room as if the word corporate excused stupidity. I scanned the papers not because I needed them but because theatrics matter. My hands didn't shake. His did, just slightly, like someone playing confidence instead of living it. He expected begging. People like him always do. Instead, I stacked the documents neatly, stood and said only, "Good luck." Just those 2 words. Nothing more. No explanation, no warning, no panic. His smirk faltered, just a flicker like a light bulb realizing it's about to burn out. I walked out past stunned faces, some sympathetic, some afraid, some avoiding eye contact like job loss was contagious. As the elevator doors closed, I swear I heard him whisper, "She'll come crawling back. Oh, sweet boy. If only you knew." My apartment was quiet when I got home. Too quiet. The kind of quiet you don't notice until your world shifts. I poured tea. Not because I needed comfort but because rituals keep the mind sharp. On my desk sat the contract. The original, signed, witnessed, stamped. Not a hiring contract, a technology licensing agreement. 5 years ago, when the company was struggling, they couldn't match my rate or offer benefits. So my lawyer, a ruthless woman named Carmen who could turn paperwork into a weapon, suggested something smarter. I didn't sell them my system. I licensed it. They never owned it. They only rented the right to use it. And the renewal? Quarterly, automatic, with one rule. Termination of the relationship equals termination of access. Meaning, by firing me, Jason hadn't removed a coder. He had removed the only legal bridge to the technology that powered 87% of their business operations. Inventory, shipping, payroll, vendor authentication, tax processing, everything. Without my licensing key, the system would remain intact but frozen, untouchable, unmovable like a locked vault with no combination. The next review and payment date, tomorrow at 9 a.m. And now that they terminated the relationship, there was no option for renewal. No grace period, no undo button. That night I slept well. Better than I had in months. Not because I wanted revenge but because for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't the one afraid. At 9:22 a.m. the next morning my phone rang. First once, then again, then 11 more times. By the 12th call, curiosity won. I answered. It wasn't Jason. It was his father, the CEO. His voice was shaken, the sound of a man who had just realized the floor beneath him was made of glass. "Brenda," he said, breath uneven. "Please tell me you're still consulting with us. Tell me my son didn't just fire the owner of the only system keeping this company alive." I didn't answer immediately. Silence, when timed correctly, is its own scalpel. Finally I spoke. "Did you read the contract?" There was rustling on the other end. A page turning, a gasp, then a choked, "Oh God. Oh no. She's not on payroll. Gee, she rents the technology to us." His voice dropped to a whisper. The kind reserved for funerals and confessions. "Jason didn't fire staff," he said. "He evicted our infrastructure." And just like that, the game had officially begun. The call ended abruptly. Not because I hung up, but because the CEO did, or rather because someone in the room must have grabbed the phone out of his hand and ended it in a panic. I could almost picture it. Executives circling him like vultures, papers scattered across the table, voices overlapping, someone yelling about compliance, someone else mentioning legal exposure. Chaos always sounds the same no matter the industry. For a full minute I just sat there staring at my blank living room wall. Something in me expected to feel adrenaline or satisfaction or maybe nervousness. But there was nothing, just calm. A quiet, steady kind of calm that only exists when you know the truth is finally speaking louder than you have to. My laptop's screen flickered to life on my desk. I opened the system dashboard, not to interfere but to observe. Licensing status: expired. No authorized access. Server activity: heartbeat pings failed. User attempts: 231 unauthorized. Someone was already trying to break into the code. Someone who didn't know that forcing authentication only strengthened the lock. I took a sip of tea as another notification popped up. Incoming call. Of course. I let it ring. He called again and again. By the fourth attempt he finally switched strategies. Unknown number calling. Clever but not clever enough. I waited 5 more seconds before answering. Not to be dramatic, but because power sits in timing. "Brenda," he snapped. No greeting, no breath, just panic disguised as authority. "We need your login credentials. Everything's frozen. The vendor platform rejected our order queue and now the logistics team can't. Jason." I cut in softly. "Slow down." Silence served sharper than any insult. He inhaled shakily. "What did you do?" he finally asked. The words always change, but the desperation never does. "I did nothing." I said. "You did. That system was built here." He snapped. "It belongs to the company." "No," I corrected. "Not the system, the data. Yes. The operational framework, the algorithms, the automation logic, the encrypted authentication paths. All of that is leased. Never sold." "I'm not talking about contracts," he hissed. "I'm talking about reason, morality. Do you know how many customers we serve? How many suppliers rely on our network? You can't just shut it off, and you don't get to fire the only person who keeps it running." I replied, "Actions have consequences. Contracts protect both sides." There was a beat of silence. Then he said the quiet part out loud. "My father's going to kill me." I didn't respond. He tried again. "Just tell me what you want." I could hear movement behind him, a door opening, footsteps, then another voice, low, controlled and furious. "The CEO, give me the phone." Jason must have hesitated because the next words were bit out like broken glass. "Now." The line shifted. "Brenda," the CEO said, tone formal now, stripped of everything except urgency. "We need to resolve this today." "I agree," I said. He exhaled, relieved. Good. Then let's talk numbers. We can negotiate a buyout. Fair compensation. Immediate reinstatement of." "No." That word stopped him cold. "No," he repeated. "I told you yesterday," I said. "I'm not coming back." There was quiet breathing on the line. Slow, steady, holding down fury or fear. Maybe both. "Then what are you asking for?" "I'm not asking," I said. "But I will give you options." Paper rustled. Someone was taking notes. "1. You migrate to a new system. It will take months and millions and you'll lose clients." His silence answered that option. 2. You purchase full rights to my platform. "And the cost?" "That depends," I said. "On what?" "On whether you want me to walk away quietly or rebuild it better for someone else." His reaction was a whisper. "Oh God." For a moment neither of us spoke. Finally he said, quieter now. "Brenda, why didn't you tell us?" I almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I did," I said. 6 years ago in writing signed by legal your predecessor and your board. But why structure it like this? Because, I said softly, men like you always think you can replace women like me. There was a long, slow exhale. Not anger, not denial, recognition. Finally, he said, I'll call you back. And just before the line disconnected, I heard him turn and say, not to me but to the room. Everyone sit down. We need to talk. We're not dealing with a former employee. Boss. We're dealing with the owner. The CEO didn't call back for 6 hours. 6 hours in corporate time isn't 6 hours of silence. It's 6 hours of frantic meetings, legal counsel scrambling, finance running numbers they never thought they'd need, and IT trying and failing to brute force doors that were designed not to break. I knew exactly what was happening behind those glass walls. Panic disguised as productivity. Around 3:40 p.m. my phone finally buzzed. Not a call this time but an email. Subject line, urgent meeting request. No emojis, no friendliness, no hope you're well, just urgency and dread. Attached was a calendar invite for a video call at 4 p.m. Not just with the CEO. 3 additional names were listed. General Counsel, Head of Finance, Jason. Of course, Jason was included. People like him never disappear quietly. I accepted the meeting not because I needed to, but because showing up sends a message. I'm not hiding. You should be. At 3:59 p.m. I clicked the link. 4 cameras flickered on. The CEO looked exhausted, tie loose, sleeves rolled, face pale. The legal counsel sat rigid, eyes narrowed behind thin glasses. The head of finance looked like someone who hadn't eaten all day. And Jason looked like panic wearing a suit. His bravado was gone. His jaw clenched, eyes darting everywhere except at me. Brenda, the CEO started clearing his throat. Thank you for joining. You requested it. I nodded. Finance jumped in first, voice tight. We need clarity on system risk. The warehouse teams have resorted to manual documentation. Shipping delays are now 17 hours. And if we don't restore operations tonight, vendor penalties activate. Legal finished. Jason muttered. This is ridiculous. She's holding us hostage. His father turned his head slowly. Jason, stop. Jason shut his mouth for once. The CEO refocused on me. We've reviewed the agreement. Legal confirms it's enforceable. There are no loopholes. Correct. I said. He continued, tone controlled. You mentioned 2 possible paths earlier. Yes. And the second option was a buyout. I didn't speak. Said I waited. Let silence dig the grave. Finally, legal spoke. We need a number. Something realistic. Realistic. Interesting word. Because what they wanted wasn't realism. They wanted mercy. Before I name a number, I said calmly, I want to understand something. The CEO nodded slowly. Go ahead. I looked directly at Jason. Not unkind, just direct. Why did you fire me? His eyes flickered. Toward legal, toward his father, then down to the table. His voice came out small, defensive. I thought you were redundant. No apology, no accountability, justification. Did you review my contract? I asked. No, he muttered. Finance closed her eyes like she was praying for patience. Did anyone? I pressed. Silence answered for him. People think contracts are paperwork, but they are confessionals. They reveal who pays attention and who assumes ownership without earning it. Finally, the CEO stepped back in. Brenda, what will it take to restore operations? 2 things, I said. First, a number, legal, ready to pen. And second, I continued watching Jason carefully. An acknowledgement. He frowned. What kind of acknowledgement? That the system doesn't run because it exists. I said, it runs because someone built it, maintains it, and understands it. Jason scoffed. So you want what? Gratitude. No, I said. I want recognition. The CEO's gaze sharpened, not angry but assessing. He understood. Finance placed her pen down, voice softer now. What's the number, Brenda? I didn't blink. $2,400,000. Jason exploded before anyone else reacted. This is insane. His father didn't look at him, just spoke quietly. Sit down. Jason stayed standing. So, I continued. That amount covers a full buyout, transfer of intellectual property, system keys, documentation, and a 10-day transitional support window. No ongoing role? Legal asked. No future involvement, I confirmed. You could feel the weight of those words. No strings, no return, no second chances. The CEO rubbed his forehead. If we agree, how fast can you restore access? As soon as the wire clears, finance swallowed. And if we decline? Then your board will spend months explaining to investors, I said, why your entire logistics infrastructure collapsed over one preventable decision. Silence settled over the call. This time no one interrupted it. Finally the CEO exhaled. Send the finalized agreement, he said quietly. Legal nodded. Jason just stared at me. Anger mixed with disbelief and something else. Understanding. Not respect, not yet, but recognition. And maybe that was enough, because for the first time in his life he finally realized power isn't loud. Power isn't inherited. Power is knowing the system well enough to take it with you when you leave. I sent the revised contract that evening. No dramatic cover letter, no threat, just the facts. Clean, precise, and legally airtight. The kind of document that doesn't scream power but assumes it. Then I did something unexpected. I turned my phone off. Not because I was avoiding them, but because I wanted them to sit with the silence. People underestimate silence. It forces reflection. It forces panic. It forces truth. By morning, 4 missed calls, 2 voicemails, and a thread of increasingly frantic emails waited for me. The last message was from the CEO. Wire in progress. Call me the moment it clears. Not if, when. There's a moment right before a company realizes consequences are real. Where every conversation becomes strangely polite. Every word becomes softened, wrapped in apology, wrapped again in the hope of undoing what's already done. They were in that stage now. At 10:13 a.m. I refreshed my banking app. Incoming transaction pending verification. Amount, $2,400,000. I stared at the screen for a long moment, not in disbelief but in quiet acknowledgement. Years of work. Years of being overlooked. Years of hearing phrases like, tone it down. You're too technical. Let Jason present. He looks the part. Funny how quickly value becomes visible when the system holding everything together stops cooperating. My phone buzzed again. This time a text from an unknown number. It cleared. Please restore access. TO, direct, efficient. A man who finally understood urgency. I opened the admin console. The interface was simple. A secure verification screen, a log timeline, and the licensing toggle. A tiny switch. Just one. Truth is, there was no dramatic shutdown earlier. No explosion. No malicious sabotage, just a locked door no one but me had the key to. I hovered over the toggle but paused. Not to hesitate, to think. The system was more than code. It was my proof. Proof that skill matters more than titles. Proof that being underestimated is not a weakness. It's a weapon. With a single click, the switch flipped. Status changed. Unavailable. Active locked. Authorized system mode. Restored. And like unclamping a blocked artery, everything surged back online. Second later my phone rang. I picked up. It's done, I said before the CEO spoke. Relief hit the line like a physical sound. Thank you, he breathed out. Operations are already recovering. The warehouse dashboard is updating. Vendors are responding. Good. Then the tone shifted. Not transactional but personal. Brenda, I need to say something. I waited. We failed you, he admitted. Not just yesterday, over the years. That wasn't the sentence I expected. Not even close. You shouldn't have needed leverage to be respected. That sentence sat heavier. For the first time since this began, something beneath my calmly layered confidence moved. Not pride exactly, more validation. Respect is an ode, I finally said, but it shouldn't require disaster to be visible. There was a quiet hum of agreement, then unexpectedly. Would you consider contracting with us long-term as a systems strategist? Advisory level. Your terms. I closed my eyes briefly. He still didn't understand. No, I said softly. I'm not returning to a place that only values me when it's burning. He exhaled, not irritated, just resigned. I had to ask, he murmured. I know. He cleared his throat before speaking again. There's one more thing, he said. Jason wants to speak to you. I almost laughed. Of course. Before I could decline, another voice replaced his, tentative, stripped of ego. Brenda. Jason. He didn't sound angry. He sounded human. I'm not calling to argue, he said quietly. I wanted to say I was wrong. Not perfect, not poetic. But real. I thought knowledge was replaceable, he continued. I thought people were interchangeable, that systems just ran because they existed. A beat passed. I didn't understand what I was walking into, and I didn't respect what you built. I'm sorry. There were a dozen things I could have said, sharp ones, satisfying ones. That I chose the truth. Learn from it, I said. Silence stretched. Then he replied, I will. I ended the call. Not abruptly, not dramatically, just with closure. Then I sat back and let the quiet settle. Not the silence of being dismissed. The silence of having been heard. For the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like I'd finally won something. It felt like I'd finally walked away from something I never needed to prove myself to in the first place. And somewhere deep inside, I knew this wasn't the ending. It was the beginning. 2 days after the system was restored, an envelope arrived at my apartment. No courier, no signature required, just a thick cream-colored envelope slipped under my door with the company letterhead embossed at the top. Inside was a formal acknowledgement letter, something between an apology and a legal concession. It confirmed receipt of payment, transfer of intellectual property, and full termination of any remaining ties. At the bottom were 3 signatures: the CEO, General Counsel, and shakily Jason. A printed copy wasn't required. It wasn't even the kind of gesture corporate culture normally cared about, but it meant something anyway. I placed it in the drawer beside the original contract and closed it gently. Not as a trophy, as a reminder. Because the lesson wasn't that I won. It was that I should have never needed to fight for basic recognition in the first place. By the end of that week, my routine shifted. Not in big cinematic ways, just quietly. I stopped checking my work email. I stopped waking up with the instinct to solve problems no one else understood. I stopped bracing for emergencies that weren't my responsibility anymore. On Friday morning, I drove to the cafe near the river, the one I used to sit in during the early days of building my system. Back then, I worked with headphones on, fueled by cheap coffee and the pressure of knowing failure wasn't an option. I chose a table by the window, the same table as before. Funny how full circle never feels the way you expect. It's never loud, never triumphant. It's just quiet. While I sipped my drink, my phone buzzed. Single text, short, professional. If you ever want to build something again, call me. No assumptions, no hierarchy, just respect. Yo, I didn't reply. Not because the message wasn't meaningful, but because sometimes a message is only meant to be acknowledged, not answered. Later that afternoon, a notification appeared on my LinkedIn profile. Profile viewed. Jason, Operations Lead. I clicked his profile not to indulge curiosity but to confirm something. His headline had changed. No more. Future leader in innovation. No buzzwords, no chest puffing. Instead, 5 simple words. Learning the hard way. That made me exhale. Not in satisfaction but in something closer to relief. Because maybe, just maybe, this wouldn't be a cycle that repeated itself forever. 2 weeks passed with surprising peace. I slept more. I read novels instead of technical documentation. I cooked dinner instead of eating whatever was closest to my keyboard. But the world doesn't pause just because one chapter closes. One morning an email arrived. Not from the company but from a name I recognized, a competitor. Their message was direct. We heard what happened. We'd like to talk. Not about fixing someone else's mess but about building something new. Your terms, your team, your pace. At the bottom was a single sentence. We don't underestimate the architect. I stared at the screen. Not with excitement. Not yet, with consideration. Because this time I wasn't entering from a place of desperation or proving myself. I was entering from choice. I typed a short response. Let's talk next week. Then I hit send. That evening I took a walk through the neighborhood. The air smelled like spring. Even though winter technically still had a hold on the calendar. Kids rode scooters down the sidewalk. Someone grilled dinner nearby. And a dog barked at absolutely nothing because that's what dogs do. Simple things I used to rush past. When I reached the park, I sat on a bench and watched the water move. Steady, deliberate, unbothered by obstacles in its way. I realized then what happened at that company wasn't a revenge story. Not really. It looked like one from the outside. Underestimated woman outsmarts arrogant leadership, gets paid, walks away victorious. But revenge implies I wanted them to suffer. I didn't. I wanted them to see. To see the work, to see the structure, to see the hands behind the machine. And finally they had. As the sun lowered, I stood and headed home. No fanfare, no dramatic music, just a quiet confidence that hadn't existed before. At my door I paused. Not because I doubted the future, but because I finally recognized something. I never needed validation. I needed boundaries. Respect isn't given because someone demands it. Respect is the natural consequence of understanding value and refusing to let others define it for you. When I stepped inside, my phone buzzed again. This time from an unknown number, a single message. Thank you for not letting me stay the person who fired you. I didn't respond, but for the first time I smiled. Not the polite, calculated smile I used in the conference room, but a real one. Because the lesson wasn't just mine. It was his too.